Shabbat Shalom, everyone, listening now and in the future. This is Joel at Pfeiffer Productions, recording in 3 Shades of Blue Studios. The Sabbath has just ended. The sun has gone down on Saturday. Excuse me. On January 20th, 2018. And I was thinking about the Sabbath all day. I watched some videos on the Sabbath today. And I was going to record a video about it earlier, and I had problems with my setup. It wouldn't recognize the hard drives I just got set up for all the video I've been trying to prepare to do. So instead of doing anything with making a video, I had to reformat the hard drives and back up the data and all that kind of stuff that goes with it. But the process I was thinking about, the day of rest, the Lord's Sabbath, the word of the Lord saying that it's hallowed and holy and should be maintained as such, and that the fourth commandment even says to remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. So what is the way to do that is just the question a lot of people end up discussing. And the Bible gives us some pretty good instruction and mentions the Sabbath many times throughout the entire Old and New Testament. And I went, before I started recording this, and opened up the King James Bible here and highlighted the word Sabbath and did a search on the word Sabbath on this PDF file, and also opened up the Wycliffe Bible and found the same word as Sabbat, S-A-B-O-T, instead of S-A-B-B-A-T-H in the King James. And the first mention of the word Sabbat is in Exodus. It's chapter 16, verse 23. And the context is when Moses had to hold up his arms, and it was during a battle. And they ended up propping up Moses' arms to defeat Amalek, the enemy. And it says, and it came to pass, this is verse 22, chapter 16 of Exodus in the King James, and then I'll do the Wycliffe. It says, and it came to pass that on the 6th day they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers for one man. And all the rulers of the congregation came and told Moses. And he said unto them, this is that which the Lord hath said. Tomorrow is the rest of the holy Sabbath unto the Lord. Bake that which ye bake today, and let me scroll up to the remainder of that passage. And there it is. Get a little more adjustment. And seeth that ye will see it, and that which remaineth overlay up for you to be kept until the morning. And they laid it up till the morning, as Moses bade, and it did not stink, neither was there any worm therein. And Moses said, eat that today, for today is a Sabbath unto the Lord. Today ye shall not find it in the field. 6 days ye shall gather it, but on the 7th day, which is the Sabbath, in it there shall be none. And now in the Wycliffe version, pardon me. So in the 6th day, they gathered in double meats, that is, 2 gomer by each man. For so all the princes of the multitude came in and told them to Moses, which said to them, this is that the Lord spake. The rest of the Sabbath is hallowed to the Lord. Do ye whatever thing shall be wrought tomorrow. And seeth ye those things that shall be sodden, so that whatever thing is residue, keep ye till into the morrow. And they did so as Moses commanded, and it was not rotten, neither a worm was found therein. And Moses said, eat ye that in this day, for it is the Sabbath of the Lord. It shall not be found today in the field. Gather ye in 6 days. For so the Sabbath of the Lord is the 7th day. Therefore it shall not be found. the seventh day came, and some of the people yielding out to gather. Whoops, I zoomed in. Pardon me. To gather. Where are we? And they found a knot. Verse 28. For so hath the Lord said to Moses, how long will ye keep my commandments and my law? See ye that the Lord yaft to you the Sabbath, for this ye have to you in the 6th day double meats, each man dwelleth at himself, none go out of to keep his place in the 7th day. And the people kept Sabbath in the 7th day. And you can read the rest if you like. I'll scroll up to the end of that and just make a few comments on the Sabbath is referenced the first time in Exodus when they are going to receive manna, the food that is created by God and left for them while they're in the desert and have nothing to eat. And it was called manna, for they know it's not what it was. And it would be gathered double portions on Friday because the Sabbath starts Friday evening when the sun's going down or when the sun goes down, and it ends when the sun goes down on Saturday. So they would get a double portion, and that would get them through 2 days. Other times in the week that didn't work. You couldn't keep it overnight, it would go rotten. And it's very clear in this first reference to the Sabbath that it is the 7th day, and the weeks of the year throughout all time, as far as I understand, no matter what calendar has been used, it's always been a 7-day calendar. There were maybe some minor exceptions, but in general, the people on earth have used a 7-day calendar throughout time, and the 7th day is the day of rest. It's the day of the Lord, and it's the 7th day is the day of rest because in Genesis, when the Lord created all there is, it was in 6 days, and the 7th day he rested. So it's a day of communion and fellowship with the Lord, and a day we should do our best to honor and serve and spend time with him. And so in conjunction with that, I was thinking about making videos. Is that work, or is it serving the Lord and not work, or what? I guess everyone has to come to their own conclusions on these matters. I've been praying about it and thinking about it and considering that it's potentially work. I mean, it sure felt a little bit like work trying to get these hard drives formatted when they seemed like they were working and then they stopped, and then, it takes hours to get them back. At the same time, while I was doing that, I was just pressing some buttons and watching people of with a mind and spirit for the Lord giving their commentary and their takes on the Sabbath and what it means and what you should do. I've watched many videos on that from a lot of different takes from the people that are Seventh-day Adventists, and plenty of people that are Jews, and plenty of people that just think keeping the Sabbath is part of keeping God's commandments because it's one of the 10 commandments. And then, of course, there's the other side where people say if they're under grace, it's not necessary, or some people try and make very complicated arguments about Jewish calendars and festivals and things we don't understand. I don't find much purchase in that because of the clear reference to 7 days throughout the Bible on this. And so, going back to the search I did in the King James, when you search for the Sabbath or Sabbath, and I did notice in the Wycliffe as I read that, it's spelled both S-A-B-O-T and S-A-B-A-T, so I should probably search for both when I search for it. But what we can do, if I go back to the search and I go to the second one that came up in Wycliffe, it is the last verse, verse 58. And unfortunately, this PDF doesn't tell me what chapter it is until I get to the top. I forget what it is. Esdras, 3rd Esdras. Chapter 1, verse 58 has the second reference, at least to the word Sabot in the Wycliffe. And verse 58 says, till that the land will do benignly their sabbats, which can be used as just a reference to rest in the Bible. Sabbats can be a reference to giving the land rest in this case. He sabbatized all the time of their forsaking in the applying of 70 year. Now there's the number 7 and 70 years in this case. So there will be those references. Now if I go back to the King James and do a search on Sabbath and hit enter, let's see. I know everybody likes to keep the King James. I've found the King James and the Wycliffe to be very, very comparable, not surprisingly, because I believe the King James is based on Wycliffe's translation, which is the original translation into English, and parallels the King James very well, and it does include both the Old and New Testaments, unlike Tyndale, which is incomplete to some extent, and was also based on Wycliffe. For those that don't know, John Wycliffe was put to death for publishing the Bible in English for the first time, so he paid the price. So the second reference in the King James is Exodus. Well, it's the second time in Exodus. Let's keep going because it's going to show every one when I do this search. Okay, so now as we go through Exodus, the Sabbath will be referenced repeatedly. We'll not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain, which is a commandment, and then remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Now this is when Moses actually reads the tablets, and there it is right there. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. It is Exodus chapter 20, verse 8, and then 20 verse 9. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. But the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the 7th day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. So clearly right there it says what the Sabbath is, why it's on the 7th day, and how it relates to Genesis when the Lord made heaven and earth. So that is very, very clear to me, and when people make arguments in other directions, it raises a few red flags to me. Anyway, let me see if I can get back to Exodus 20. I want to see if I can find that in Wycliffe real quick. And it was 20 verse 8 and 9. Let's see here. Show it so you can see what I'm doing. There's 20 verses 8. Have thou mind that thou hallow the day of Sabbath, S-A-B-A-T. In 6 days thou shalt work and shalt do all thy works. For so in the 7th day is the Sabbath of thy Lord God. Thou shalt not do any work, thou and thy son and thy daughter and thy servant and thine handmaid, thy work beast, and the comeling which is within thy gates. For in 6 days God made heaven and earth, the sea, and all things that been in them, and rested in the 7th day. Herefore the Lord blessed the day of the Sabbath, and hallowed it. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thou be long living on the land which thy Lord God shall give to thee. And then more of the 10 Commandments are shown. So there, second reference in the Bible to the Sabbath is the 10 Commandments. Fourth commandment remember the Sabbath, keep it holy. So making videos that honor the Lord and serve Him and point to Him and give glory to Him, I think would be acceptable. I've done the work to set up the studio and get it all prepared and ready for the most part on non-Sabbath days, but like I said today, I formatted hard drive, so it's got to be left open to grace and interpretation as well as intention. I think free will is the key to how this has been set up for us, and by our choice we determine our fate, and by our intention we prove our hearts. So it's easy to point fingers and see the flaws in others without noticing the flaws in ourselves, and so it's probably best to leave the judgment up to God. And if our intentions are good, He knows we won't be perfect, and therefore it's not something to stress about. I don't think He's not trying to make us have an uptight Sabbath where if we do any little thing, it's like, oh no, now we're going to be doomed because, we lit a fire or swept the foyer or had to put windshield wiper blades on or something. It's even, I know in the other parts of the Bible, in the New Testament even, Jesus was accused of breaking the Sabbath several times when He healed people and also when He fed people. And He basically said that the Sabbath was made for man. Man wasn't made for the Sabbath. We're not going to serve the intent of it by being legalistic and trying to define every possible way you could do it right or wrong, and then complicate it beyond belief, which happens all too often when people try and interpret God's Word. I think it's best to keep it simple if you can, and not to try and impose on others your own personal viewpoints as to what the correct way to do things is.
You guys were supposed to be wild.
But essentially the Sabbath is a day of rest, and it's a day of, like I said earlier, communing with the Lord. So I think reading the Bible would certainly be a good thing, and so that's where I think if I continue to make videos on the Sabbath, I will try and make that the center point, even though I may delve into news that is contemporary and could be of a variety of different subjects. But my intention will be to try to maintain a focus that is scriptural, and how referencing the Bible can shed light on all situations and also provide hope and strength and comfort, even when you're looking into some of the worst of what the nefarious side of mankind has to offer. So I'm looking through the results of the search for Sabbath. There are 172 instances of the word Sabbath in the Bible. So I certainly can't go through them all. But 7 years, 7 weeks, 70 years, all come up. The number 7, which is a number of perfection, is the key to knowing when it's the day of rest. So when people say it's a specific festival that takes place on a calendar date, on a calendar that nobody now even knows about or uses, I wouldn't go for that. Just, it's the 7th day of the week. Conventionally, in English, it's Saturday. If you're a Spanish speaker, it's Sábado, so they just call it, what it is, the Sabbath. Saturday I think the English word Saturday is referent after Saturn or Stern or one of those gods of also nefarious origins, so it'd probably be better to call it Sábado in English or just Sabbath, but the devil tries to pervert everything, so it's not a big surprise at all. If they tried to bastardize the name of the very day to honor the Lord by calling it Saturn Day, but that's okay. Our intentions are good, so it will be fine. As I look through all these Sabbaths, of course, because it's used as a reference for rest, it does get used in reference to new moons and ceremonies, festivals, that type of thing. So it's used in that context, but the actual Sabbath is very clearly the seventh day of the week. And it's been that way since the beginning of time when God made everything. So let's do one other. I'm going to move over in this search to do a new search. I just want to see how many times Sabbat shows up in Wycliffe. Oh, I put two B's. Sabbat. 189, even more than the Wycliffe. Interesting. There's also some words that have the Sabbat in it, but then something else like Sabbatha, Sabbatcha. It's looking like proper names because they're capitalized. Like here's one. Sabbatha, chapter 10 of, again, it doesn't tell me, unfortunately, what book without scrolling up. But again, the word Sabbath, S-A-B-A-T, is the exact same word as Sabbath in the King James. And it appears at the same places in the same chapter and verse. So, exact same references, in other words. And again, it's the seventh day. It's the day of rest. So, I think with that said, I'm going to wrap this up, and hopefully it all worked well. Thanks for your attention. Shabbat Shalom. Aloha. Peace.